everybody, Jep here, and today we're making an interesting video ranking every agent's abilities in Valorant. Of course, this is going to be a very subjective video, as an ability in the lower ranks could be viewed as terrible, while that same ability could be absolutely broken in the higher ranks or Pro League. I'm going to be excluding all ultimate abilities on this list because I feel like that could totally be a video on its own. So if you want to see that video, then make sure to leave a like on this one to show me that you want to see it. I'm going to list every agent's abilities on a 1 through 4 ranking scale, with 1 being literally trash, while 4 being amazing and useful in almost every situation. Then I'm going to add up the score of all 3 abilities, and bam, that's our rank. So the lowest score available that any agent got on the list with all 3 of their abilities added up is a score of 6. And 3 agents got that lowest score. The first one we're going to talk about is Breach. So Breach is one of those agents that got the score of 6. And the reason why is because Breach is not a versatile agent really at all. Because the basis for the ranking of what I'm doing for this video is I want to take the average player on any map. I don't want to hone in on your really bad players or your top ranked players or Pro League players on a specific map. We're just going to even the playing field for every agent. So with that being said, the Fault Line I scored a 2, the Flashpoint scored a 3, and the Aftershock I scored a 1. The big downfall with Breach's E Fault Line ability is that it requires a lane for it to actually be useful. So like, you know, your maps like your Fracture and your Haven, that works really well. But if you have open maps like, you know, your Breeze, your Fractures, Breach's Fault Line really starts to fall off. So that's why I ranked it at 2. I will say Breach's Flash, his Flashpoint, his Q ability, I ranked that at 3 because it's actually not a bad flash. It's only really limited that it has to be, you know, it has to like land on an obstacle, so it's kind of limiting in those open areas. But I will say, for whatever reason, Breach's Flash is kind of hard to dodge for me, so I thought it was pretty good. Not ranked a 4, but I thought 3 was good. And then of course this Aftershock is really not that great of ability. It's very situational, and you really need a tight corner for it to actually, you know, trap someone in there or force them to move somebody out. The next agent that got 6 points is of course going to be Cypher. So Cypher's E ability, Spy Cam, it is actually a decent ability. It's actually pretty good. I ranked it a 3 because, you know, it is pretty much free intel all the time. You don't have to buy anything, and you just set it up there and just watch, like, you know, you just hold down and watch a flank, or, you know, watch an entire site by yourself. The one limiting factor of Cypher's Spy Cam is that you have to sit there and stay on it the whole time, so it kind of takes a player out of rotations and moving around, and it's kind of boring to sit on, but that's besides the point. Being able to tag someone is pretty good too, and since it recharges, not a bad ability. Now Cypher's Q ability, Cyber Cage, is literally trash. I don't need to say much about it. Like, it just is honestly just awful. You know, KO of course can completely nullify it, and it doesn't last very long. And I mean, yeah, it's just straight up just a bad ability. Like, it honestly is just bad. And Cypher's C ability, Tripwire, I scored that at 2 because it isn't a great ability. You know, he does get 2 potential flank watch spots, but you know, those can be totally nullified by a, you know, a Fade Prowler or a Yoru clone. And those are really susceptible to jet updrafts, you know, TPs from Omen and stuff, and being smoked off. So it's not really great. So yeah, Cypher gets a 6. And another agent I'm sure you guys are gonna get mad at for me putting it at a 6 is going to be Yoru. Now, when adding up all Yoru's abilities, he gets a 6 because Gate Crash I did a 2, Blindside I did 3, and Fake Out I did 1. With this TP, I will say his TP isn't bad, and it's really good for literally rotating across the map and kind of fooling agents, but it's really not a good TP for getting out of, you know, for getting out of sticky situations in a midst of a gunfight, because there is a lengthy animation Yoru has to do. You know, when he like pulls his arms in to like pull himself through his TP, it does take a while, as opposed to a chamber, you know, just snap his fingers or rain a dismissing or something like that. Like, Yoru's TP does take a little while, and Yoru's Blindside isn't terrible. It actually isn't a bad ult. It is somewhat easily dodgeable in my opinion. Yeah, definitely not a bad blind. But Yoru's C ability, Fake Out, I think is a pretty poor ability. Number 1, most of the time they just shoot it anyways. You know, it does give you information, and you know, it at least attempts to blind the agent. But most of the time, if you do try to, you know, like play the decoy yourself and just act like you're walking through, you're gonna get shot most of the time. I've tried it a few times. Like, very rarely am I actually able to like walk through and like sneak past him and turn around and shoot him. Most of the time they just shoot me in the head, and I just feel so dumb even trying it. But yeah, Yoru in the hands of a really good Yoru main can be absolutely broken, and then literally all these abilities could be, you could rank them 4. But since we are going off of the average player on average maps, we're gonna have to rate Yoru at a 6. But real quick guys, before I move on to the next category, we have a wonderful word from today's sponsor. You want to know what really grinds my gears? Not having a fair game of Valorant. Thanks to the free software Valorant Tracker's in-game match tool, today's sponsor, I found out that I was going up against an Immortal 2 insane Reyna with golds and silvers on their team. They were really cool about it, and we got destroyed, but at least I knew why. It wasn't a fair fight. So what are some other things that Valorant Tracker can do to help me learn more? Well, there's a huge catalog of epic stats for so many things on your Valorant account. count. All your kills, headshots, and KDA of all your weapons, helping you determine which one you're better at using. You can also see which maps you play the best on to get you really excited and pumped that you got your best performing map when you see it pop up in the queue. But my favorite stat is seeing which agents I play well and win the most with. Basically, by looking at this list, I know that Chamber should be my absolute go-to while I need to stay far, far away from Astra. So make sure to use my link in the description or the pinned comment to download Valorant Tracker for free, and thank you so much for continuing to support the channel and sponsor this videos. Now, those are all the agents that scored a 6. Now moving on, we have all the agents that scored a 7 when adding up all their abilities, and the first agent is going to be Phoenix. Now, I know Phoenix actually isn't a bad agent, but he is heavily carried by his curveball ability, his flash, which is clearly a 4. It's one of the best flashes in the game right now. It's like almost impossible to dodge. At least I think it's really hard to dodge. It honestly really is good. Phoenix's hot hands ability, his E ability, sucks. It's a terrible molly, probably the worst molly in the game. Of course, I rated that a 1. And then Phoenix's blaze, his wall, I rated it 2 because, you know, it does block line of sight, not for long at all, but it, you know, it doesn't block it for long, but at least it does block a line of sight. I gave his blaze ability at least a 2. Add that all up and Phoenix gets a 7. Now there's only 2 agents that scored a 7. The next one is going to be Neon. Now I know a really good Neon player can absolutely exploit all of these abilities, and you could make a case for they're all 4 all amazing, but I made Neon's E ability high gear a 3 because, you know, running around is good. Of course, she is much faster. She can rotate faster, and the sliding breaking crosshair placement is really good too. But I feel like your average player on your average map is going to try to rely heavy on this, and they might accidentally mess up a lot when trying to slide around and run around and stuff, and they might actually, you know, do more harm than good with it, but still really good for rotating and sliding and breaking crosshair placement. Neon's Q ability, Relay Bolt, is really good in good hands, but your average player is not really going to know any crazy lineups with it. Yeah, it stuns and it can stun 2 areas. You could do some great lineups with it, but to be honest, it's not really good in your average player's hands. I rated it a 2. And Neon's last ability, her C ability, Fast Lane, I rated that a 2 as well. It's a pretty good wall. It breaks line of sight. You know, it has that little pocket in the middle. Sometimes that pocket could be a blessing. Sometimes it could be a curse when you think you're safe and an enemy just like totally, you know, disrespects it and walks in there. The one thing I will say with Neon's Fast Lane ability that's kind of tough is a lot of players or a lot of enemy players will just spam through the wall, just assuming you're running through it, because it doesn't last very long. So you could definitely die quite a bit when, you know, just walking through it due to just random spam. All right, that's it for all the agents that scored a 7. Moving on, we have all the agents that scored a 8, and there's quite a few, but there's 4 of them. The first one is going to be Omen. Now, Omen's E ability is Smoke Dark Cover. I actually rated that at a 4. I think it's a really good smoke. It lasts a pretty good while. You can do some crazy one-ways with it, and it recharges, especially if you buy 2 of them and you last till the very end. Say you're in a post-plant scenario, you've already used 2 smokes. You could potentially use 4 smokes that round if you use both your smokes at the beginning. Your 3rd smoke recharges in the middle of the round, and then in a post-plant scenario, you have another smoke. Omen's Q ability, Paranoia, his blind, his near sight ability is actually pretty good. It is a little limiting with, you know, it doesn't flash an entire room. It's a kind of narrow line of sight that it goes through, but it is undodgeable, unavoidable if it hits you. So I think it's really good with that. You can't just like, you know, turn away and avoid a Paranoia. It will get you every time. Now, Omen's C ability, Shrouded Step, is pretty bad. It's one of the worst abilities in the game, in my opinion. I rated it a 1. There is a cute little technique with the Paranoia and Shrouded Step combo where you near sight them and then you Shroud Step behind them to kind of catch them off guard. But it's kind of very niche and unique. It doesn't really happen very often. And I really don't think the verticality you get with the Shrouded Step is enough to really justify it anymore. So we're going to leave that ability at 1 and give Omen a total of 8. The next agent to score 8 points is Astra. So Astra's E ability, her Nebula / Dissipate, is her smoke. I rated that ability a 4 because it is a really good smoke. You know, on its own, it's pretty good. But when you can also recall it and it throws up a little smoke and then just like dissipates away for after a second, it really does kind of catch the defense or the enemies off guard for a bit when they think a smoke is blocking line of sight, all for it just to disappear right before their eyes. Astra's Q ability, Nova Pulse, is honestly one of the worst abilities in the game as well. It doesn't really work very well. Why hit a Nova Pulse when you can just gravity well them or something? And yeah, I don't think the concuss is that big of a deal. It's kind of hard to pull off. You really need coordination. I rated that ability a 1. Now, Astra's C ability, Gravity Well, I rated it a 3 because it's actually really good. It works best in post-plant scenarios when you're trying to pull someone off a spike, and it does actually do really good at that. You could also use it to pull people into smokes or into mollies, or, you know, pair it up with like raised mollies and stuff. Astra would have ranked higher in the list, but her Nova Pulse ability is just too bad in my opinion. Moving on, we have Raze. Now, some people might be a little upset that Raze scored an 8 8, you know, when adding up all her abilities, but let me explain. Raze's paint shots are really good. I definitely think it's a solid 3. You know, it does have a pretty good long-lasting and wide area effect AoE, and I know I'm not the only one that's taken massive damage early on in the round when Raze chucks a nade at her spawn. But Raze's Q ability Blast Pack, I rated it a 2 because, again, guys, we're talking about average players on every map, and I really don't think your average players are gonna be able to Blast Pack around like your pros or your, you know, or Immortals or Radiants. Those people using Raze really know how to create space, especially when paired with you know, the Showstopper. But overall, your average player isn't really gonna get much use out of Blast Packs. Lastly, Raze's C ability Boombot, I rated it a 3 because it's actually really good. It's really solid ability to guarantee info in, like, you know, tight corners or going down long line of sights. It'll alert and track onto that enemy, and if they don't deal with it by destroying it, it will do some pretty hefty damage. And of course, lets you know that at least one enemy is nearby. The last agent to score list for today's video is going to be Brimstone. So Brimstone is actually a really solid agent. Let's first talk about his E ability, Sky Smoke. So I think Sky Smoke would have definitely scored a 4, not a 3, if the range limitation wasn't there for his Bracer, because Brim is really limited with how far he can put his smoke. So, you know, that is a big hindrance to it. But I will say that Brim does have some of the best smokes in the game because they do last so long. He just has to be kind of close to place them. Brimstone's Q ability, Incendiary, you know, his Molly, I scored that at 3 because it is actually a really good Molly. Yeah, he only gets one of them, but it is really good for, you know, lineups and post plants, and it lasts incredibly long. It does damage really quickly. So it's a really solid Molly, you know, clearing out corners, clearing out little cubby areas. And of course, with post plants, yeah, it's a very solid one, so a 3. Brimstone's C ability, his Stim Beacon, I rated it a 2 because if some people don't even enjoy being in the Stim Beacon because, you know, it does increase recoil and with the RPM boost, the speed boost is really nice, and I have seen some crazy, you know, quick hits with everyone stimmed up with the Brimmy Stimmy, but I think it's kind of an average ability, let's be honest, guys, really quickly. So it's a really solid Molly, you know, clearing out corners, clearing out little cubby areas. And of course, with post plants, yeah, it's a very solid one, so a 3. Brimstone's C ability, his Stim Beacon, I rated it a 2 because if some people don't even enjoy being in the Stim Beacon because, you know, it does increase recoil and with the RPM boost, the speed boost is really nice, and I have seen some crazy, you know, quick hits with everyone stimmed up with the Brimmy Stimmy, but I think it's kind of an average ability, let's be honest, guys. Those are all the agents that scored a 8. Let's move on to all the agents when adding up all the abilities scored a 9, and the first one is going to be Jett. So Jett's Tailwind ability, I'm easily going to put that a 4. It's a pretty good get out of jail free card, and it makes Jett a pretty, you know, scary opera as well. The one unfortunate thing, since they did nerf the Tailwind ability for Jett, is now you have to time it where you will anticipate if you're going to get into a gunfight or not, and you could straight up just waste the ability if you don't get into that gunfight within that short window of, you know, charging up her Tailwind. Then we have Jett's Q ability, Updraft. Now, I don't think Updraft by itself is such a great ability. You know, it is literally just her being able to just get higher to get elevate herself onto different things, but when you do pair that with the Tailwind, it can be a pretty formidable way to break line of sight. But yeah, it's kind of an average ability. Now, Jett's C ability, Cloudburst, some people might not agree with this, but I am gonna rank it a 3, and the reason why is because Jett's ability to throw a you know, Cloudburst in the middle of the site and then Tailwinds to dash into it to break line of sight, and it really does force the defenders to either choose if they're gonna take a fight with the Jett in the smoke or continue to stare, you know, where the Jett came from, where presumably the rest of the team is going to come from. So I really do think it's a good way to help break line of sight and entry for your team, and it is a pretty good ability for Jett just to, you know, break line of sight and just rotate away if she's not in a great scenario. Up next is Viper, and Viper scored a 9. So obviously her Toxic Screen ability, her wall, her E ability is going to be a 4 because, I mean, that literally is like what makes Viper so good. Being able to throw down a long line of sight breaker that can like be, you know, thrown up, brought down, you know, it'll last the entire round. It's just so good and really does make Viper a must pick on maps because of that. And the little decay that comes with that too is pretty good as well. Viper's Q ability, Poison Cloud, I rated it a 2. It's a pretty average ability. Yeah, when paired with Snake Bites for post plant scenarios, can absolutely devastate anyone who is trying to defuse. But on its own, it's kind of like mid. You know, it's good, but it's nothing like super crazy. Viper's last ability, Snake Bite, her C ability is really good. I think it's one of the better mollies, and I'm gonna rate that a 3. It definitely one does open up a lot of doors on how a Viper can play. Are they going to save their snake bites for post plants, whether it's, Molly into the diffuser, or, are they going to use it to, throw their snake bite down in, choke points and in doorways to stall a push from the enemies. And of course, when paired with a poison orb or her ultimate, the Viper's Pit ability, it honestly is a really good ability, especially with the vulnerability. Up next is Killjoy, and she got a 9 as well. Her E ability Turret, I rated out of 4 because it literally is so good. It gives you intel all the time. You absolutely know that if it does see someone and starts shooting them, which by the way, they do take damage too, and it kind of adds up kind of quickly, and it's just free intel. Her Q ability Alarm Bot is really good for also getting free intel as well, and if it does manage to land on the person who does, walk past it, that vulnerability is really good as well. Of course, the downsides to Killjoy's Turret and Alarm Bot is that Killjoy has to be within range of those abilities. If Killjoy was global, these would definitely all be 4s, but that I'm glad that's not a thing. Killjoy's last ability, C, Nano Swarm, I rated that at 2 because it is a pretty decent mod. You can use it for post plans. You can use it in combination with our Alarm Bot to capitalize on that vulnerability as well. The one downside is it does make a noise if you do get close to it, and the enemies can shoot it out. But yeah, it is a pretty decent molly, so I rated it at 2. The next agent to get a 9 is Sova. Now Sova's E ability Recon Bolt is definitely going to be a 4. I mean, you can shoot it from across the map and it'll land so far away. There's crazy lineups you can do with the Recon Bolt as well. And if you do manage to get the scan off, it scans everybody in the area until they shoot it or until they break line of sight. It's a really good information gathering device and can set up some nutty wallbang. Next is Sova's Q ability Shock Dart, and I rated it a 2. Now I know if you were like the pro player Crashies, it would be a legit 4, but since I'm going off the average players and average maps, I feel like with the Shock Darts there isn't a crazy amount of value you can get reliably. It is kind of based how well you can bounce something off, and even if someone's there, if you could hit them. They do a decent amount of damage, but I feel like when I play Sova, I don't really even use the Shock Darts all that much. So yeah, I think I rated it 2. Sova's C ability Owl Drone I think is actually really good, so I rated it a 3. It is one of, if not the best information gathering tool out there. Even if you don't tag anybody, there's so much you could call out with pings. You could call out, chamber trips, cipher trips, how many enemies are around the area that you can see. And of course, that's always a plus when you do tag them as well. Second to last agent to score a 9 is going to be Reyna. Now, Reyna was a really tough agent for me to score her abilities accurately because it really does all depends on how good of a player you are and how good you're doing right then and there to really capitalize on the abilities. A cracked out player can absolutely dominate with Reyna, and all these abilities can turn into 4s. But with your average player who maybe isn't getting a ton of kills, maybe having an average game, they can't really capitalize on her abilities all that well. So with that being said, I'm still gonna rate Reyna's E ability Dismiss. I'm still gonna rate that a 3. The reason why, because even if you do get a kill, or if one of your teammates get a kill nearby and there is a an orb nearby or a soul nearby, being able to have that get out of jail free card when you're not in a good scenario and escape to safety is just, it honestly is so amazing. Of course, the major downside to this ability is that you do have to have access to a soul for this to work, but yeah, being able to get out of a sticky situation when you need to is honestly really good for Reyna. Moving on, Reyna's Q ability Devour, her heal, I rated that a 4 because it honestly is so amazing, especially on pistol rounds. If you do get that kill, you can just heal all the way up, making Reyna a force to be reckoned with on pistol rounds. And of course, being able to heal up after a gunfight back to full health, at least for the time being, is honestly really good as well. And then we have Reyna's C ability, her Leer. Even with the buffs, guys, I don't even really think it's all that great of a near sight or a blind. Now, it does force the enemies to react, whether they choose to shoot the, Leer, the eye, or if they choose to take cover, or if they choose to just shoot where they think you're going to come from. But it does have a lot of limitations. The last agent to score a 9 is going to be Skye. Now, Skye really is a nutty agent when you really think about it, guys. Let's take a look at her blind. I do think her blind is her guiding light ability, her E ability. I do think it's really good, so I did rate it a 4. Not only does it blind, it also gives you information as well. Even if you're not using her guiding light ability, her blinds to necessarily flash someone, you can use it for information, which it doubles for that as well. And being able to pop flash or flash for your teammates who are far away is also really good too. Next is Skye's Q ability Trailblazer. I rated it a 2. It basically does everything a Sova drone does, but kind of worse. You don't get as much information with the Trailblazer because you can't really see too far away. And I feel like the concuss isn't that great of a deal. I'd rather have a recon tag than a concuss. But yeah, it's not bad. I just rated it a 2. Now we have Skye's C ability Regrowth, and I rated it a 3. It's definitely a amazing heal. The one unfortunate side effect is you cannot heal yourself as Skye. If you could, this would be an easy 4, but since you can't heal yourself, I'm gonna rate it a 3. It is really good though for healing up the entire squad pretty quickly. You do have to be kind of close for them to do that though, so there are some limitations, but it is still a really good ability, so that's why I rated it a 3. Now we're moving on to all the agents that scored a 10. Now these abilities are gonna be like really cracked, and for an agent to score a 10, you know that the vast majority of their kit is going to be really good. So the first agent to do so is the other healer, Sage. Her E ability, Healing Orb, of course is gonna be a 4, even though it only does heal 60 HP at a time over a short, duration. Being able to heal not only yourself, but other enemies, literally so far away as well. It's just amazing, guys. We all know Sage's healing ability is so good. Now we have Sage's Slow Orb ability, her Q1, and I rated it a 2 because it's not a great ability, it's just okay. The enemies can totally choose to just disrespect it if they wanted to and just walk through your Slow Orb. It's not a guaranteed stop to their push, it just slows them down. But there are some pretty good Slow Orb lineups that a Sage main can, use as well. It's not a bad ability, just kind of mid. And then we have Sage's C ability, Barrier Orb, her wall. I rated that a 4, of course, because it honestly is an insane ability. Being able to almost guarantee spike plants is truly amazing. And being able to throw a wall up to not only block line of sight and block doorways, but to put your wall up to, protect someone if you're resurrecting them. And of course, a Barrier Orb wall on pistol rounds is always tough to deal with as well. The next agent to score 10 points is KO. Now, KO's E ability is 0 point in her knife. Of course, it's going to be a 4. I mean, it does 2 things. It gives you information, tells you how many and which agents are nearby in the radius, and then also nullifies every single ability that agent has. Now, your average player isn't going to get a ton of use out of the nullifying effects because there isn't going to be that much coordination to capitalize on that. But I will say, with the information you get from his knife alone, definitely makes up for that, which gives it a 4. Moving on, we have KO's Q ability, Flash Drive, his blind. So his blinds did literally just get hit with a nerf literally a couple days ago, but I still think it's a really good blind, honestly, like insane. So I rated it a 3. You're not gonna be able to pop flash or underhand as much anymore because of the duration of the blind, but what you will be able to do, and what I think a lot of KO mains and KO players are gonna start doing, is that they are going to start setting up their team with lineups with their overhand flashes now. With the recent buffs, KO's overhand flash definitely is more viable now. Lastly, for KO is his C ability, Fragment. I will say that KO does have a pretty good molly. It lasts for a good while. It does a pretty good amount of damage. You can definitely set up some lineups with it, and with KO's molly being able to do damage over walls, you can definitely abuse that mechanic and take out insane pieces of util like Killjoy's Lockdown on the other side of a wall. The last agent to score a 10 when adding up all of their abilities is going to be Fade. Now, I'm sure this isn't news to you guys that Fade has a really nutty kit. Her E ability haunts, her eye. Of course, I rated that a 4, especially with all the new lineups coming out every single day. There's just so much you can do with their eye, and since you can't throw it really far, there is a lot of lineups you could do with it. It gives you so much information. The enemies do have to deal with it and can set up some crazy retakes and wall bangs. Fade's Q ability, Seize, I rated it a 2 because I think it's pretty average. It's definitely her weakest ability by far. You can pair it up really well with like a raised molly, but by itself, I think it's just average. Lastly is Fade's C ability, Prowler. Now, I know you guys already know this, but that's definitely going to be a 4. Fade's Prowlers are absolutely incredible at getting information for pretty much free. You can clear a lot of space with it, and the enemies absolutely must, deal with it, shoot it, destroy it, or they're gonna get nearsighted and deafened, which is a huge thing you don't want happening to you. Plus, when you pair her Prowlers with her haunts or, her ultimate, it's just honestly insane. Especially with pistol rounds, Fade is absolutely nutty on pistol rounds because her Prowlers do have so much HP, and the pistols just can't burn through them quick enough. Okay, so those are all the agents that scored a 10. Now, I'm sure you guys are wondering, well, where's Chamber and all this? I haven't heard Chamber yet. Well, it's because Chamber scored an 11. Yep, the only agent to score an 11, and it's pretty easy to see why, guys. His E ability, Rendezvous, absolutely deserves a 4. It is just absolutely insane. Being able to very, very, very quickly get out of jail free card, go back to a safe spot, really does make Chamber an insane opper, and being able to take any fight, pretty much take any fight that he wants, and then if it isn't going his way, or if he does get a kill, he can quickly TP back, Rendezvous back, and he can't get traded. Now, this is where I think Chamber might be a little controversial on this pick. I put his Headhunter, his Q ability, I put that a 3. Now, I'm sure most of you guys are gonna say, wait a second, no, Jeppy, that definitely should be a 4. Being able to have basically a pocket guardian and be able to kill someone with 150 credits with a headshot with his Headhunter definitely should be a 4. But guys, remember, this is a ranking on a average player, for versatility. And I do think your average player is gonna definitely miss a couple shots, or maybe not even get the kill with the Headhunter. And if they do end up getting the kill, they might have burned 4 shots, which is quite a bit of money. So yes, while it is really good on eco rounds and can absolutely annihilate someone from across the map with a headshot with a Headhunter, I will say your average player is probably not going to get those headshots. Now, lastly, Chamber's C ability trademark is easily a 4 as well. I still can't believe he had 2 of those at launch. Since it is a global flank watch ability, Chamber can be across the map if he wanted to. He's not restricted into the area, you know, how Killjoy is with their alarm bots and, you know, her turret. And since the enemies do have to deal with it, you know, they do have to either shoot it or just deal with the, you know, the slowdown effect. There is some counters though. You can get a controller to smoke it or a jet to smoke it. But, you know, if you're average player, it's not really going to happen too much. But yeah, of course, we all knew that Chamber was going to get an 11. I hope you guys agreed with my list, but if you didn't, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below on why you think I got something wrong. But as always, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, notifications if you're new. Now, with all that being said, Jippy out.